tonight. We are here and we're going to learn a little bit about our missionary from Wilmington to Romania, Sarah Smith. I am Tara Hackney. I'm the liaison between Christ Community Church and Sarah's ministry in Romania. So I serve on the missions team in that way, and I kind of help her keep in touch with what's going on here and you guys with what's going on there. And she's become my dear friend over the years. And I just wanted to open in prayer and not take any time because we want to hear from Sarah much more than me. So, dear Lord, we just come before you tonight and we just thank you so much for Sarah and all her many years of ministry to orphans in Romania. Lord, she is doing your work. She is being your hands and feet to the lives of so many children who you love in Romania, Lord. And we just pray blessings on her and help us to all lean in and hear and learn and just praise you together, Lord, for all that she's done. In Jesus' name, amen.
Hello. You guys hear me okay? Sorry if you thought it was on first. Is it okay with you guys if I stand down here and not up there? Or would you rather me stand up there? Okay. I just feel like it's more like personal down here. I can talk back and forth a little bit. Yeah, first of all, Tara's wearing a really beautiful Romanian shirt. So just imagine that on me right now, speaking. Yeah, so thank you guys for having me. I'm going to go as fast as I can. Tell you guys a little bit about how, I know there's a lot of faces I don't know very well here. So I'll tell you a little bit about how I've gotten to Romania, how long I've been there, and kind of story of my kids, because I also have 10 children in my home, Romanian children who are adopted. But a kind of backstory on that is the first years that I came in Romania. And I think, can I just tell you when to switch the slide? Does that work? I'll just make a little, okay, so sorry. Forgot to ask about the clicker. So I went to Romania for the first time in 2006 on a short-term trip, and I hated it. Couldn't speak the language. I'm like, I'm never going back. It was actually really stressful, not being able to talk to the kids. And really long story short, so it would take me another hour to tell you how this all happened, but I actually moved to Romania in 2009 when I was really young. I was only 21 when I moved there. Had lots of energy. Backstory of why I moved there, I have my master's in psychology, counseling, and I was doing my dissertation paper on reactive attachment disorder in children. And one of my first impressions of Romania in 2006 when we went there, other than the fact that I couldn't speak the language, was when we walked into the abandoned baby hospital. And back in 2006, things were way different than the way they are now. They actually closed this hospital, the initial hospital I went to, but it was 40, 50 babies in one room. There was no color to the room. It was all like white cribs. I don't even like chicken wire kind of cribs. I mean, it sounds bad, but that's kind of what like the first time I went there, 2006, and it was silent. And all the babies were white. They were not sleeping. They were awake. And I remember thinking, okay, I just finished my undergrad in college, and I remember, like, with attachment disorders, kids learn to not respond to, if their needs are not met, they don't respond. And so that's why I initially went to Romania in 2009 to move there to finish my master's degree in dissertation in reactive attachment disorder, which I did finish. And then my plan was to move back here 2 years after that, a year to 2 years after that. And it's been almost 14 years, and I'm still in Romania. I do miss home, though, so it's good to be back. So there's a few pictures of my first few years in Romania. Like I said, I had a lot of energy. I would spend like 12 hours a day with the kids. Not that I'm super old, but 14 years ago was a lot different physically, and as you can tell. So there's a few pictures from the first years. Real quick, just to backstory of the story of the kids that we work with now, and the reason a lot of them have the problems that they do emotionally, even the children in my home that I'll talk a little bit about with you guys, is because in Romania, even to this day, and I know a lot of you in this room, a handful of you in this room have been over there to visit, this is how the babies are fed, bottom right picture. To this day, like they still prop the bottles up. It's it's not personal. Like there's no attachment of holding a baby, feeding them a bottle. That's how their lives begin. And so from the baby hospital, some of the lucky ones end up in a foster home and later up social apartments. Some of the ones that aren't so lucky, or are the ones who have disabilities. Actually, all of them that have disabilities end up in orphanages. So there still are lots of orphanages in Romania today. Most of them are for children, especially baby orphanages, are all for children with disabilities. But a disability can be anything from like Down syndrome to a kid was born without a finger. Like this is a whole thing. Anything that's not the child that's not perfect is pretty much given a handicap certificate and called a disabled child. So that's kind of just a back thing to keep in your mind when I'm talking about the kids that are in my home and some of the ones that I didn't get as babies, or some of the girls in the orphanage, that we work with today. That's all their lives started, and that's still how it is today. You can switch to the next slide. I have a lot of slides, guys. For those of you guys who are in church the last few weeks, I kind of already had the same slides, so I'll just go real quick over these. We still do our orphanage program. We work with the kids in the orphanage in Bucharest, Romania. A lot of these kids that you see in these pictures are actually the babies and the little toddlers in the pictures in the slide before. So it's kind of neat. I tell some of them, I was changing your diapers and now you're taller than me. But we do Bible studies, cooking classes, as you can see. They love doing crafts, hands-on crafts, and that's just time that we get to like build a relationship with them. We do take them, you can switch to the next slide, on outings, or this is our Christmas program from I forgot this one was in here. This was actually the day before I came here in December. And a lot of these girls, actually all of these are girls, they're in these pictures, and the boys at the top are all babies, toddlers with us when they were little. So we do stay in contact with most of the same kids that we've been working with the whole time, just hoping that with some healthy attachments, even though they didn't get adopted, because I'll go into that in a few minutes about adoption in Romania. Even though they didn't get adopted, we hope and pray that, just our presence in their lives and, planting the seed, that someday they will come to know the Lord most importantly and, do well in their lives. And so these are some of our kids this Christmas. Next slide. A lot of the girls that grew up in the orphanage were we spent a lot more time with the girls, being girls. It was easier to relate, with the young girls in the orphanage. And a lot of the girls got really close to us. Like before I had kids in my house and when I was still really young, like I said, I was in the orphanage daily, even Saturday and Sunday. There was no day off. Not because I had to. I loved, that's what I like to do until you hit a burnout wall. But, and so these are the girls, when I say my girls, these are the girls that we've worked with all these years. And so a lot of these girls leaving the orphanage, I would say 80 to 90% of them either leave with a man or are trafficked and are in prostitution. And so a lot of them end up pregnant, and once they end up pregnant, they're either in abusive situations or they're left on the street, or if they're in the trafficking situations, a lot of them are either forced to abort, and if they can't abort, then they're just thrown out. And so a lot of these girls ended up having nowhere to stay. So we're like, okay, we'll just pay for an apartment, and they can just stay there when they need it. But the need was bigger and bigger. Like all these girls are saying, oh, hey, can you please help us? And it's hard to know, like, you don't want to tell a kid no, but then you can't, we didn't have the room. So I don't know if most of you guys were in church a few weeks ago. We have a house where there's another missionary couple that work with me, are living in the house as house parents with these girls now. Because we also realize that even though they're 18 years old, like they're a lot of like mental and emotional states not 18 years old. Like they're still little kids. And like I will never forget one of our girls when she had her first baby. They gave her the baby because in the Romanian maternity hospitals, they have a baby and the baby stays in the in the room, and they give you a baby when you leave the hospital. And they're like, here's your kid, go on, dear, and have a good life. And so we went over there the night that we drove her to her house, and we put her down, and I watched her walk in the back room, and she propped the bottle up in the bed. And she's like, she's in the back room eating. I'm like, well, let me show you how to hold a baby. But she would not hold the baby. She was like, I can't hold the baby. I don't know how to pick him up. So if you can imagine, a lot of these girls, they're not all like to that extent, but a lot of these girls don't even know like how to care for a baby. And they end up pregnant. They don't know where they're going. And so through this need, we have what is called Esther's house, is a house that we have for girls leaving the orphanage. Most of them do have kids, not all of them. Some of them just end up trafficked and need a place to get out. And the best part of this is Tuesdays is my day with these girls. And so I get to lead Bible study on Tuesdays because we do Bible studies a few times a week with the girls, devotionals. And just seeing these girls like choose to read their Bible, like even since I've been here in America, I've gotten messages on WhatsApp app that we speak with, and they're like sending me Bible verses, and I'm like, wow, it's really neat just to see how they're searching. They're taking their little steps and they're searching the Word themselves. And so as you can see, some of our girls have gotten baptized in the church. A lot of their babies have been dedicated in the church. And Romania is, for those of you who don't know, it's predominantly Orthodox, and so they're very like strict on like their traditions, and there's a lot of saint days that are holidays, and every month there's at least one holiday. Like that's a good part about Romania, but for them. So just to see our girls leave that, which is they're taught that in school, they're taught that growing up, and leave that and be able to come to church and choose it themselves. We're going to dedicate our baby to the Lord. We're going to read our Bibles. We're going to get baptized. Is probably one of my favorite parts of being in Romania. And that's actually probably what keeps me there. So you can switch to the next slide. We still do camps in the summer with the kids from the orphanage doing Bible studies, games, Bible studies, all the fun stuff. Switch to the next slide. I'm trying to go as fast as possible because I have to get to my kids too. And then these are some kids, like I said, my favorite thing. The one thing I love is the girls, just being with them and pouring into them, but I also have a huge heart for adoption and for getting these kids out of the orphanage, because there's a lot of kids, especially these kids with special needs, that are brought into the orphanage, and yeah, they could have some kind of disability, but most of them that pass away should not pass away. And we see them pass away for reasons. They're still tying kids to the bed, and I don't judge them at this point because they are not trained. And so I try not to go in there saying, oh my gosh, why are you doing this? They're still, in some of the orphanages we've been in the last summer, up in northern Romania, they're still putting them in cages kind of thing, like from ground to ceiling up, because they can't handle these kids. And so my heart is seeing these babies, because we're still in the abandoned baby hospital, thinking what their future is. They're going to end up in one of these orphanages if they make it to one of these orphanages. And so just praying over these babies, okay, God, show them a family. Like, have a Romanian family step up and adopt these kids, because in Romania, there's still a huge, they don't want gypsy kids is a huge thing. And even with the kids my kids, most of them are gypsy kids, and I've heard comments from people in my church, not Orthodox church, my church, saying, I don't think you understand, these kids later on will end up turning bad. It's in their blood. And it's still that mindset of, okay, the gypsy population they have bad blood, and kids with disabilities they're disabled because of their parents' sins. And so because of a lot of these mentalities that I hear all the time, Romanians don't really adopt these kids. They will adopt a really cute Romanian blonde, healthy baby. But most of them, these kids who are with the hospital where we work, because most of them do have some kind of, being in a hospital, some kind of problem. Like I said, it could be something super simple, but laying in a hospital abandoned is going to make that worse, 100 times worse. And so over the past couple years, my heart has literally been playing over each kid. I'm going to get on the phone today. I'm going to find a family and take this kid home. And so these are some of the kids that I personally had in the the abandoned baby hospital where I work, and they're now all adopted in Romanian families. And especially the little boy on the top right, he was with us in the abandoned baby hospital for 18 months. He never left the hospital. They didn't know what to do with him. They couldn't find the handicap orphanage for him because they're all so full. And it was right during COVID, and I was praying for him. Like, I have a weakness for kids with Down syndrome because one of my sons that I have adopted has Down syndrome. And I just think these kids are really special kids. And I knew at that point, I can't handle him right now, so I'm going to pray. We're going to find a family for him. But I also had in the back of my mind, there's no way. But sometimes I say God kind of slapped me in the face, I can do anything. There's no way in these situations. And in the middle of COVID, I found families for 4 of the babies who we were told they wouldn't live more than a few years. And this is huge because they're Romanian families who, like I've told you guys, even in the church, it's hard to find people even to foster these kids, but much less adopt them. And all of these kids have been adopted. The little boy with the glasses standing up, he had a trach, a G-tube. He was completely paralyzed. He couldn't move his neck at a year old. We were told he wouldn't live more than 2 years old at the most. He is now talking. He goes to preschool. Ever since he's been in a family, he's standing up, as you can see. He's 4 and a half, and he's really small for his age, but he definitely has some kind of intellectual disability, but he is loved, and he has family. So this, for me, is like my heart. It's just one baby at a time, pretty much preventing them from getting in the situation with the kids that we work with are in. And so these are some of my babies. Some of them are big. Some of you guys probably remember the twins that I used to take care of daily, Flora and Ella top, and they're doing amazing. They're in a Christian family. They're actually homeschooling them, but they're doing great. So I'll let you switch to the next slide. So my story of how first time I ever thought about taking a child home was with this sweet little boy. He came into the baby hospital when he was 3 days old, and perfectly healthy, really cute baby, and never knew anything was wrong with him for the first 3 months. We thought he was a perfectly cute baby. I was kind of wondering what's going on, why is he not, because he was really cute, Not that I was drawn to the really cute one, but he just had a really sweet personality. And I started spending all the time with him, like even days and nights. And when we found out he had a heart defect, it was a heart defect that was super simple. Like they could have done a surgery and he'd have been fine. But he didn't have a birth certificate. And this is the first time I ever hit this situation. Because I knew a lot of kids in Romania didn't have birth certificates. And actually, the fun part about that in some other cases was we got to name the babies. So we'd give like really cool American names from friends back home on some of the babies. And but I didn't realize what that could affect someone who had something wrong with them. And because he didn't have a birth certificate, he didn't exist. So they wouldn't do any kind of treatments, any kind of medical care. I didn't put this picture up here, but the last few days of his life, he passed away when he was 6 months old. Last few days of his life, I stayed with him 24/7 in the hospital, but they wouldn't even intubate him. Like they were just letting him pretty much lay there until the life ended, all because he didn't have a birth certificate. And so, and I would have adopted him in a second. And I was like, I will take him to Italy, I'll take him to America, I'll do anything. And they said, you can't, he doesn't exist. Like there's no birth certificate, you can't even make him a passport, there's nothing you can do. Basically, the kids who are born with no birth certificates, and they wouldn't even let us bury him. It's a long story. So this was in January 2014, which for me that was like the crushing point of ministry, because then I was like 20-something years old. Like I got this. I'm gonna do everything. Nothing's gonna knock me down. And it did, and I didn't even realize at the time how much it knocked me down. Like years later, but this was in January, and in March, the next slide, Alex was born. And Alex has an interesting story because his mom lives on the streets, but she's grew up in an orphanage. I actually knew all of his siblings really well. My best friend from Romania actually works for me. Her and I, we had our favorite kids in the orphanage. We don't tell people that, but no one is in here knows those kids. And so his sisters were like the two of us had their sisters, our girls. And so we knew his mom was pregnant. We knew she was going to have to abandon the baby. We knew the whole situation when this was going on. We tried to help her. We had her in a maternal center. She wouldn't stay there. She has a lot of mental disabilities. And I don't know if that's necessarily genetic or if it's from growing up in an orphanage, abandoned. And so I was like, well, we'll find him a family. Well, why not? Because he's going to be a cute little boy. We thought it was a girl, actually. And I was living at the time with one of my friends. We were living together, my roommate. And her and I drove out there, met Alex before his mom did at the hospital. And she's like, well, what if we just take him home and find him a family after that? Because he was actually born, and he would be so mad if I was talking about him right now and he's upstairs. But he was actually born with syphilis. And a lot of these babies are born with syphilis. He had hepatitis. He had all of these different treatable diseases. But because she was on the streets, because she was in the situation she was, he was having to have shots twice a day to actually get rid of the syphilis. And so we're like, we'll treat him and then find him a family. And neither one of us ever thought that he would be with us today. Like I said, this was 2 months after Stefan passed away, and I was like, I'm done getting attached to kids. I'm not gonna. I just, you have to have that wall. Like I can do ministry, but I don't want to get too attached. But I did. He's now a Smith. He's upstairs in the kids program. So Alex was actually the first kid that became my child, my adopted son, and he's almost 9. This was 9 years ago. And he's a really sweet kid. He's doing great in school. He plays the drums. You guys probably all met him. So that's kind of his backstory of how I got Alex. But like I said, it took me 6 months to even think that I'm going to actually do the papers to keep him, just because it would have been a long, hard time after Stefan passing away. When Alex turned a year old, he had just turned a year old. And granted, I'm a single mom in my young 20s at the time with a toddler. So he would go to like movies with my friends at night. He would like stay out 24/7. He was a really good kid. God really did that. I think he did that like not scare me away. Because when he was a little over a year old, I got a phone call from social services telling me that Stefan's mom was pregnant. And they said, we don't know what it's going to be. We don't know if it's a girl. We don't know if it's a boy. We don't know if it's healthy. We don't know if it's going to live. But we don't know what we're going to do with it because same problem. It won't have a birth certificate. And I didn't even think twice. Now that I look back, I should have probably thought twice, but no. I said, whatever it is, I don't care if it's triplets, I'm taking Stefan's sibling. Like, whatever that is, that will be my child. And that's Anais. The next slide is Anais. So Anais was born without a birth certificate as well. And there's a reason I have a picture up there of her head cut open with a bandage over it, because I have other pictures that are way more graphic, but I won't share those. She didn't have a birth certificate for 2 years. And I had her as a baby. I had lawyers. I went the whole, like, I'm American, I'm going to figure this out way. We could not get her birth certificate. It was a crazy process in Romania. And this is how I initially got to know someone in the parliament and started working to change the laws in Romania. And we did. There's actually a law called Anais's Law. Because there is now a law in Romania that kids without birth certificates, they will give them a birth certificate no matter what, if their parents have or do not have papers. Because that was the problem. Her mom didn't have papers. But that was years after Anais didn't have a birth certificate that we were able to do this. And so Anais, one night, fell in our yard, and she had an accident. Actually, I think the Garrisons were in Romania this time. It was pretty bad. It was really bad, the way she fell. And went to the hospital, and we sat there for 4 or 5 hours, like late at night, and they would not do even like the CT scan, anything on her. Nothing. She doesn't have a birth certificate. We can't. I'm like, she had papers to be with me as a foster child at the time that literally said, foster child born on this day. So when they would call her, they'd say the feminine child on this birthday is how they would call her in the hospital. And that night, I remember so clearly laying beside her bed. I'm like, okay, God, just help her not have hit her head too hard. Like, help her be okay, because they wouldn't treat her. Like, they wouldn't do anything for her because she didn't have a birth certificate. And like I said, that has changed. Praise Jesus, that now these babies can get birth certificates even if their parents don't have papers. But that's just kind of a backstory of how I got Anais, is because of her brother, Stefan. And she's a great kid. I'm sure most of you guys have met her. She's a great kid. She's really smart. She loves school. She loves reading. She's a good kid. And she is now a really healthy little girl. Like, she was also born with hepatitis, but got it. Next slide. I have a lot more kids to go through. After Anais, so after she got her birth certificate, what do you guys think the first thing I did was? Get her a passport, go to America. Like, I hadn't been home in all these years because she didn't have a birth certificate. I'd come home with Alex for like a short trip. But I got to go home. I have 2 kids. I'm a single mom. I'm never going to have any more kids. Like, that's enough. 1 girl, 1 boy. That's how God wanted it. That's how our life will be. We're going to go to America. And I drove from Wilmington to Texas with both of them when we got here to finish the class in TBRI, which is a therapy based on attachment disorders. And I really wanted to become a practitioner in this so that I could go back and help, some of the kids we'd placed in foster care, or even the girls and kids that we worked with, and even my kids in my home. And I'm really glad I did. It's an amazing, side note, thing. So we were in America for that entire fall. And we get back to Romania the middle of November that year. And the first place I go is the next day is the baby hospital, because I really missed a lot of the kids. And Alex was with me. And he walks in. So in the hospital, it wasn't one big room anymore. They would switch to a different building, a different hospital. They were by rooms. It was like newborn room, like little older baby room, toddler room. It was like 5 different rooms of different age kids. And my favorite kids were obviously like the middle and older kids. I kind of knew them since they were babies, so they were the ones we went to. And Alex was with me, and he's the first one that ever saw Felix. And he kind of made a comment, "Mommy, can we keep him?" And I'm thinking, nope, never gonna keep a kid. And I actually have a picture of that day somewhere. I don't put it up there, but that's the first time I ever held Felix, that right picture. And then I realized he had Down syndrome. And coming back from America, I think that God had that like timing planned out, because it's just like I've always had kids with Down syndrome in my heart, and I'd come back from here, and I'm like, you know what? I'm a TBR practitioner. I can handle 3 kids. Like, why not? And so I did the papers, and he's now my son. He's also a Smith. Warren is my grandfather's name, and who I was really close to. That's why his name's Warren. But we call him Felix in Romanian, because we were calling him Ren, because I thought it was really cute. And then we realized that Ren in Romanian is a reindeer. So that stopped as soon as kids started making fun of him. So now his name is Felix. So at this point, I had 3 kids, and I'm like, okay, he has Down syndrome. He needs a lot of therapy and a lot of help. Like, we're not gonna have him. I would never thought of taking a 3rd kid or 4th kid ever at that point. But there's always a but. We had actually, when I was in America that fall, when we were still here before we went back, we saw a picture on Facebook of a little girl who was completely blue. And you can change the slide, and I'll show you that. Well, one of those pictures. I don't know if you can tell in the pictures, but the top right picture, she was completely blue and black. And I have a really good friend of mine that we've worked together a lot. We were like, we're going to get her to Italy. She's going to get surgery. And this was when we got back in November. She's like, we'll take her in January, and she'll get her surgery. And they canceled it because she was supposed to die in January of that year. They said there's no way she would make it on an airplane. She won't even make it out the door. Like, she's not going to live. And honestly, we all thought she died. And then the hospital in northern Romania, I'd never met her at this point, remember. She was a random abandoned baby we found on the internet. And called my friend, said she didn't die. Could we try to get her to Italy? She's like, yeah, why not? Try to get her to Italy. And I found this out recently in one of our last surgeries we went to. The doctor who flew with her is one of my really good friends. He's actually the doctor at the baby hospital where we work. So we have a really special relationship. But he told me recently, he goes, Sarah, her saturation levels on that trip was down in the 30s. Like, no one thought she was going to get off that plane. And it was a thing of liability. Like, if she dies, we can't transport the baby. Like, he risked everything for her. And that's why, I mean, she has a special bond with him even today. But she went to Italy. And they didn't get to do the initial surgery they had planned at first. She should have had it as a baby, and she didn't. And that's why she has so many complications now, because it was a surgery in the first few months, and she had it 18 months. But the problem was they called me and they said, well, I don't know if you know this, we don't have anywhere to take Christina. There's nowhere for her to go. So I was like, well, I'm not taking her, so we'll find someone to take her. And some of my friends in Bucharest who work, like they have working with kids with placing kids in adoption, I'm like, here, I'll give you guys her story or picture. Everyone in Romania, even in northern Romania that we knew, like connections, send it out to everyone, find her a family. And so many families would see her face because she's really cute. And they would say, oh, well, let me hear more about it. And they'd hear about her problems. And they would say, well, we'd rather send her some toys or presents or something. We don't think we can handle her. We're like, she doesn't need anything but a family. Like, that's what she needs. So at that point, I agreed to take her for a short period of time. And she came home when I'd only had Felix for 3 months. So I went from 2 to 4 kids within like 3 months. And Christina came home, and it was really hard. She was a really difficult child because 19 months she never left ever. So she was scared of trees and everything we walked out around us, and it was very difficult. There were definitely moments when I was like, maybe I should send her back. Like, that sounds horrible. But at the point, I'm like, what am I doing? I'm like, by myself with all these kids. She screams 24/7, and I have the other kids in the home. But I didn't take her back. We pushed through, and she turned 2, started walking. Her and I drove through COVID 39 hours to Italy, February 2020. So right when COVID started, and Italy was the hot spot. That would take me 3 hours to tell that story right now, but I won't do that. Anyways, but that was a miracle after a miracle after a miracle after a miracle. Because she wouldn't have gotten to that hospital then, she would not be here today. And they were telling us the countries are shut. You can't drive through Slovenia. You can't drive through certain countries. And I was on the phone with Tara, like, keep me awake. I'm going to go through. I'm not stopping. I'm not even going to stop to pee. Like, I'm going to get through these countries. And we were one of the last few cars to go through that country. Got to Italy that morning. We got to the hospital like 15 minutes before we were supposed to be there. Like, and we had planned on staying, like, initially before we knew COVID, staying in a hotel halfway there, going to all these different, it was a crazy story. But God, I'm telling you, this kid's a miracle. She did it, and she came through surgery way more hours than she was supposed to. And she had a third surgery, open heart surgery, February 2 years ago. And then last year, as you guys know, we were in America in Boston, have another surgery. There's no cure for her, so she will not be cured. We are trying to prolong her life as much as possible. We initially thought we could do a transplant, but her heart's on the wrong side of the body. She has a lot of other organ problems already. And so we're just trying to give her the stuff she needs and help her live as long as she can. But I'm sure you've seen her jumping around church because she's not a quiet child. She still has low saturation. She's in the 70, 80s, and she's jumping more than my other kids. So that's a miracle in itself. So that's Christina's story. So 4 kids, 2 with disabilities. That was enough, right? No. Number 5. So number 5 was Lizzie. Lizzie is actually Alex's biological sister. And her birth name is actually Sarah Nicole. So, like I said, with Alex's story, I knew his mom, I knew his siblings, they were in the orphanage, and his mom calls me mom, but she's like 12 years older than me. Like, she's got some mental disabilities. So I knew she had a daughter, and we would sometimes go visit her and give her stuff that she needed for her, but they were living on the streets. In Romania and in Bucharest, there's a lot of people that live in the canal systems and the train stations. It's kind of like underground, you go through doors. And so she lives in the train station. And this is a long story. I won't go into it because I know I only have like 1 more minute, right? I'm like looking at the time over here. Yeah, okay. The flags rose. Really fast. Anyways, one day, literally stopped by to take them something. Her mom wasn't there. We found her basically like in the trash, like in a room that went down below. And she was passed out in this pitch dark room because underground there's no light. Because they would leave her during the day to sleep because no one would see her, social service or police or someone. And then they would use her at night to like beg or make money. And she was 2.5. And so I was like, I don't know. We'll take her to the hospital where I work. We'll get her cleaned up. We'll get her checked out medically. We didn't even make it to the hospital because didn't have my car with me the other day. We were in the metro, and she starts cursing in Romanian, every possible curse word possible, spitting at me, kicking. Like, she was a very traumatized child. So I was like, I'll take her home and give her a bath. We'll calm her down. We'll take her there and take her home. And she never left. Never went to the hospital that week. But unfortunately, she had been abused in different ways being on the streets. And we did go through a lot. Like, we did go through a lot of tests medically and stuff with her. So she does struggle with some things, and she's struggling a little bit in school, but we don't know if it's because of some problems she has or it's because of the abuse she went through. But she's probably the most generous and sweetest of my kids. Like, if she sees a kid who doesn't have a candy, she would give hers up in a second. So I know God's going to do something big in her life. But that's kind of a really fast version of how I got Lizzie. And obviously I kept her because it's my son's biological sister. So I'm like, all right, can't not keep her. And she's really cute. So that's number 5. Like, a month after Lizzie came home, I get a call from the doctor at the baby hospital. We have a baby with Down syndrome. Can you help us find a family for him? And he's really cute. Watch out. I'm not going to come see him because I'm probably going to take him home. I'd already been thinking, well, poor Felix is going to be all by himself. He needs a little buddy. And so that's how I met David, the next slide. He was this bright blue-eyed little boy, Down syndrome, who's the sweetest kid, sweetest little boy. Like I said, he had a minor heart problem, and he was supposed to have had surgery, but unfortunately, doctors in Romania sometimes don't do what they're supposed to do because they think these kids shouldn't live. And that sounds horrible, but they messed up his surgery. I think it was on purpose, and so does the other doctor, but no one has proof of that. But he actually passed away. During the time that Dad passed away, so I went and picked him up from the hospital in a casket, because in Romania, it's not like here. You just go, they just hand them to you. And I drove to their house. We buried David, and he was a triplet. And his parents had the other one in their home because they're very poor. There's no running water in their home. There's a 2-bedroom house. They have 10 kids. Dirt house built out of dirt, stones, like very, 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 very poor, like Romanian village poor. And Matthias, one of the triplets, they had fed him a bottle, and because he was a preemie, he aspirated in his lungs and his heart stopped. And so social services got involved. He was helicoptered out. They said he wasn't going to live. He shouldn't be alive right now. And granted, he was a normal, healthy baby, and now because of all the stuff that he went through, he does have epilepsy. He has microcephalus. He has a lot of different problems. CP is his main thing that he has now. But he's a really smart kid. But part I forgot to tell you is they asked me if I would take them for a very short period of time. This is right before COVID, because all we have to do is get him medically stable, and his parents want him back. And my parents from here actually were in Romania. They went and met their parents. So I even asked them, like, didn't you see they wanted him back? They're like, yeah, they loved him. So we never thought that they wouldn't get them back, because they were trying so hard to get them back, and they really did care about them. Their other kids, even though they were poor, they were very cared for. So I got these 2 for that 6 months. Just put them on the free thing. And COVID, like, this is right before COVID, the year or so before COVID. And it took them until last December to get them back. Social service was really mean to them. He's a gypsy, she's not. But they were really mean to him, like, oh, if you don't do this, you can't get him back. And they did everything they were told, and they got him back. And so they got him back last December, and sadly, last January, Florin, the older twin, as you can see in the top left picture, was burned, his whole body. That's only his leg. It's over his whole back. And that's now. That's a picture of his leg now. When first pictures I cannot show you, it's too graphic. He was burned all the way down. Because they don't have running water in the house, they had boiled water, brought it in the house to make a bath for their other kids, and he apparently fell in it. But I didn't know this. None of us found out about this until months later, like 6, 7 weeks later, almost 2 months later. And so they were in the hospital. Both of them were in the hospital until April of this past year. And so they had left, and I actually got them back in April. But from April until now, they have probably been the hardest kids I've ever had, like traumatized, like emotionally. It's been rough. And it's a lot of attachment problems. There's a lot of questions. Florin has a lot of, he's more with the attachment trauma, whereas his brother's more with his brother's burned. It's a weird thing between the two of them. But they're actually not here because of that, because their parents had gotten them back. Sorry, not talking to you, Siri. Because their parents had gotten them back, we had to go through court all over this summer. And in Romania, to go through court means like 3 months you get a paper, then a month and a half later you get it legalized, and a month and a half later comes your house. Like, it's a whole mess of how things work paperwork-wise. And so I couldn't even get them a passport. So they're in Romania. They're the only 2 that are not here with me today. So that's the story of the triplets. Like I said, Davi passed away. And Florina and Matias are back with us as of the end of April. So I never thought or chose to have 10 kids. It just happened because in the meantime, they were with me. They had left, and while they were gone is when I met the other two that I have. And I'll tell you quickly Raylan's story, or no, Adelina, I'm sorry. I always forget her. In so many different levels. I guess I have no idea. Adelina, maybe because it was in 2020. That's like a Adelina. Her mom was actually is trafficked. She's still, we don't know where she is and what country she's in now. We tried to help her, got her an apartment, tried to get her out of it. At the time, I was like, why are you not leaving? Because she has her driver's license. She's not like she's not an orphan kid. And she's a normal Romanian girl. And I'm like, come on, you can do this. You have a driver's license. You can get out of the trafficking. There's no reason that you're in this. We're going to help you get out. So we were helping her this whole time. And at that time, I didn't realize what it means to be trafficked. Like, I wasn't thinking that it's that you can't get out. Because I had a situation right after Adelina was born with one of my girls who I had since she was little. She was trafficked, and I picked her up in my car, and it all went downhill. Like, traffickers came to my house. We got phone calls. I got threats. They were going to come rape my kids, take my kids. Like, it's crazy. The only way that I got out of that was because I sent emails to the American Embassy saying, there's traffickers coming after me. And praise Jesus, they left me alone after that. But this is what I'm saying is because of the other girl that I went through, I now understand Adelina's mom. Because I'm like, you have this healthy baby. She can't have babies. She doesn't have a right fallopian tube or her left ovary. They told her she would never have kids. I'm like, this is a miracle. God gave you this child so you can get out of trafficking. Come on, we're going to do this. And I could never understand why. I mean, she would cry. Like, okay, I understand. And I don't know. I never understood why she left. But now after seeing what I went through with my Rodica, I'm like, okay, now I understand. Like, I think she's just scared and she thinks there's no way out. And maybe there's not. And that's really sad. And so Adelina is actually, I don't know who her dad is, but she is, Elena was the girl's name, her daughter. And that's why no one would take her in foster care is because in Romania, I don't even know if my mom knows this, by the way, y'all, or my mom's friends, but in Romania, if you foster a child before you adopt them, the mom's ID card is sent all of your papers. So no one wanted to foster the baby, even though she was a healthy, cute little baby, because my salary, my ID card, my passport, my address, my other kids' birth certificates all went to her address, which was at the trafficker's house. And so it was a decision like, okay, what do we do with her? Do we just throw her away? Do we, obviously, I trust the Lord, and we, praise God, never had any problems in this situation with anyone in that. But that's kind of a reason why no one at that point wanted to foster her. And that's only for fostering. For adoption, it's not. They don't get your information. But side note, on Romanian laws are still all messed up. So that's Adelina. After Adelina is Raylan. She's the only kid that I ever took in my home without knowing what she looked like, ever. Got a phone call. She's from northern Romania, which I'd never even been to where she was from. People found out who I was on the internet, gave me a call, like, we have a baby. Can you find a family or can you take her? Because if you don't, she's going to die. I'm like, whoa. I work in an abandoned baby hospital, so if I want another baby, I, have a bunch of them here I could choose from. Sounds horrible, but, why would I go all the way to northern Romania? And I said no. And then they called back again. They're like, you don't understand. She can't get surgery unless she has a foster home, which is also true. Now that I've been through all her surgeries with her, I understand that because there's no way. There's no way a kid could lay there alone and make it through that. And they were like, well, if no one takes her, then she's not going to get surgery and she's going to die. Remember, I never knew what she looked like. I never knew. All they told me was she had a cleft lip. Is all they told me. And we were actually in a staff meeting at my office. And my team were like, well, you should just take her. And then we'll all just take turns taking care of her. And then once she gets a lip surgery, I'm sure that someone will take her. Because if it's just a lip, people are just scared of it. So I was like, all right. So I couldn't sleep that night. I went to bed, couldn't sleep. I was waking up, I'm like, maybe I'm supposed to take this baby. Because no one's ever asked me, ever. No one's ever called me to say, hey, we need you to take a baby. If that makes sense. That I didn't know. Like someone not from Bucharest or the hospital where we work. So maybe it's a God thing. So I called him back. And that next week, I put all my kids in my van. We drove 10 hours. And they still were refusing to get, even though I said, yes, I'll take her, they still would not give me a picture of her. They said, no, you have to do all her papers and then you can see her. Went there, got to social services with all my kids in the car with my nanny. Granted, we've been a 10-hour drive. They're in the car. And I go upstairs thinking they're going to hand me the baby and the paper and we're going to go home. And they're like, oh, she doesn't have a birth certificate, by the way. Oh, okay. They're like, but you can make her one. She has stuff. We'll just tell you this. You can go to the mayor's office. Let's say in Romanian, primaria. You can go to the mayor's office. You can make her birth certificate, and then you can go pick her up. I'm like, oh, where's she? Well, her orphanage is like an hour the other way. I'm like, where's the mayor's office? 45 minutes that way. So we only go to Triangle that day. So I made her birth certificate without even knowing what she looked like. Literally, they gave me the rights to her. They gave me all the papers for her. It said I had a child, and I never knew what my child looked like. So, like, what name should we give her? So we went to pick up Raylan, and she was really cute. She does have really pretty eyes. But the moment they put her in my arms, I knew something was wrong with her, and it wasn't just Clef. Because, and I should have put a video in here, but her eyes were doing this. Like, they could not stop. They were nonstop, like, way worse than they are now, if you've seen her now. And my nanny's like, oh, something's wrong with her. I'm like, well, we'll figure it out. We're going to go back to Bucharest. We'll figure it out. So the whole drive home, she screamed. Like, would not stop screaming. And they had told me she was a really calm baby. All I had to kill a flip. Remember that. So we get back to Bucharest. I'm like, something's wrong with her. I need to take her to the hospital. Like, she's not okay. So into the hospital, she had double ear infections, and she had milk. They pulled milk chunks out of her ear. Because, remember, at the baby hospital, they feed the babies laying on their back, prop the bottles up, take them off from his arms. And this was an orphanage. Like, this was a bigger place where she was. And so they hadn't even checked. Like, oh, you have a cleft. Everything's open. By the way, she didn't just have a cleft lip. She had an entire mouth. I think I put it, yeah. She had an entire cleft palate as well. So everything was going to her ears. So the poor kid had an ear infection. And then we figured out her eyes. The next morning, went to the eye doctor who told me she was blind. And she said, by the way, her soft spots close at 2 months old. She probably has microcephalus, and these babies don't live. I'm like, oh. Like, it was like a shock of, oh my gosh, what are we doing? I went home and cried. My nanny cried. We were all like, oh my gosh, what are we gonna? Not what are we gonna do with her, but like, how can we help her? And then went the next morning to the next hospital, and they're like, well, usually with cleft, it's something genetic, and it could be you have to check everything just to make sure. So I'm like, what do you mean everything? So they did the head CT or whatever they did on her, the nose. Then we found out she had a heart problem. So like with the whole thing, like, so I call Northern Romania, like, hey, you gave me a baby that you said had a cleft, and here's the list of things I have. They said, okay, we'll bring her back. Obviously, I wouldn't bring her back because she's super sweet and cute. But at that point in time, we were told that she would probably not hit her milestones because her soft spot had been closed at 1 month. I'm done, yeah. Anyways, and she's like walking, she's taking steps. She's a little behind for her age, and we told her she was blind. And she's blind in one eye, but miraculously, the eye that had the bigger birth defect is actually the one she can see a little bit of. So she's not completely blind. So God, she's a sweet, sweet kid, by the way. You guys have to meet her. And she's been here at church. But we have been through all the surgery. She's had her cleft surgery, her palate surgery. And she is actually doing great. And she took her first steps here in Wilmington. So, yeah. So last but not least is Sophie. So Sophie's a really pretty little baby. I don't know if you guys have seen her at church. She's even cuter now with all those curls she has. And the doctor at the baby hospital, again, calls Sarah because I had placed, remember the last few years, kids with Down syndrome, kids with, trachs and families. They're like, we have a really pretty baby. Someone's going to take her. But she's in a handicap orphanage. She's only with us for a short period of time. So like, well, I'll come meet her, take her picture, video her, and I'll send it to families and we'll find a family for her. Thinking like it's not she has spina bifida. I'm like, it's not that big of a deal. Someone's going to take her. Sure enough, we had lots of families come out to see Sophie. And every time they would find out all the things that, she'll be in a wheelchair. She has to be cathed. She can't use the bathroom on her own. She's paralyzed waist down from where her spina bifida thing is. And so no one would take her. But, me going there every day to show these families this baby, I'm like, how can I leave her here? Because she was actually in the orphanage that we worked at 13 years ago out in another village. Actually, there's someone in this room. Sherry has been to that orphanage. And it was a rough handicap orphanage. I'm like, this child in Bucharest is from that orphanage. And I had recently been and visited. I'm like, she's not going to go there. There's no way. Because, like I said, I told you guys what those orphanages look like for these children with disabilities. And so I was thinking, the twins are gone. I have Raylan. It's only one. So basically I can get one more because I was already used to having this many because the twins left, right? Like, Sophie's a really good baby. She really is. She's like the best baby like I've ever seen. She's really, really well-behaved kid. So Sophie came home the beginning of April, and then I got the twins back the end of April. And then now we're at number 10, and that's the last number. And I do say that. So that is how the story of how I have 10 kids in my home, and a very short version of their stories. They're all really sweet kids. I'm sure a lot of you guys in this room have been helping me with them. They're really sweet kids. I know God has huge plans for their lives, and I'm really blessed that I get to be a part of what His plan for their lives is. And yeah, so I'm really sorry that I went way over time. Tara's like, waving that flag. So please, guys, forgive me if you guys are in a hurry, but I had to get over as fast as I could their stories.
Okay, so we had planned a question answer time now, but we're going to skip that for a few minutes, and we're going to use some of our donut coffee time, where if you have questions, and you can ask during that. Does that sound good? Because I didn't want to. We all wanted to hear it. So I just want to tell you all, wow, like, can we just give this woman a hand really quick? I feel like, sometimes there's some scriptures about, we store up treasure in heaven, and there's some things about mansions, and I'm like, I know whose house I'm going to when I get up there, right? Like, so, but Sarah, God's made her for this, and we have to all just be amazed by Him. But there are some ways that you can support Sarah, even though she's leaving on Monday to go back to Romania. So everybody should have gotten a prayer request sheet when you came in. Those are actually specifically prayer requests Sarah wrote. And so they are really what's on her heart right now. If you could take those prayer requests home and please pray over those. A big one is the flight home to Romania. So Sarah, of course, has her 8 kids. She does have a Romanian friend coming to fly with her, but it's just going to be 2 adults. And the babies are just lap sitting. So it's 6 seat, well, I guess 8 seats, but I'm not that, you know what I'm saying. She has a baby that she has to hold. So it's a lot. And so prayers just that they'll sleep, that they won't get sick, that kind of thing, just to get her home. That's a really big one. And didn't you say there's something extra you want to add about that? That nobody gets sick. Is that what you said? Okay. The next thing that we do here at Christ Community is we have started a ministry where we send Sarah a care package once a month. And it's for her and her children. So there's, like she said, there's 10 of them. And the church will reimburse you $25 for the shipping. But if this is something, if God's just laid it on your heart that you'd like to bless Sarah and her family by sending a care package, last year some small groups went in and did it together, or a couple families did it together. But I have a sign up I'm going to leave up here if you want to do a sign up. What we try to do is we have a little theme for every month, and it's about 2 months out. So in September, the theme is Thanksgiving, or in December, the theme is Valentine's Day. So you might put some crafts for her kids, some notes of encouragement, just some little things that's just sort of to brighten their day. And the main thing is for Sarah to feel remembered and loved by this church. We want her to know we love you, we're thinking of you, we're praying for you. And there's actually, Dorothy Griffin actually there's a little mailbox that we leave on the mission table. You can write Sarah a note anytime, and then whoever gets the care packages can grab the notes out of there and stick them in their care package. So please be, writing notes of encouragement. Sarah, she's not alone, but it can be lonely, to be over there and just missing America, missing home. So we even have like an America theme day. So please, if you feel led, sign up for a care package, and then put your email address, and I'll send you a note, like a little email that month as a reminder, hey, you signed up there. So I'll send you that. Then we also have Sarah does a really good job of writing a monthly newsletter. And so if you don't receive her newsletter, put your email address here if you're interested in getting it. She sends pictures and updates of what's going on in her ministry. And so just put your name and email here, and she'll take that home and add you to her email newsletter list. And then the last thing is monthly support. Sarah needs help financially. There are some cards on that table right outside. There's some little Romanian flags on a table. And on the back of the card, it tells how you can give her umbrella ministry is called Stepping Forward Ministries. And you can do it's a 501c3, so you can do a tax-deductible donation. They they actually are a good team with her over there in Romania. But there is a way that you could send her, a one-time gift or a monthly gift. She really obviously has a lot of expenses with her family. So just really encouraging you to do that. She has another brochure too that's out there to grab one of those. But what I want to do now is closing is I just want to invite anybody who would like to. We're just going to have Sarah stand here and we're going to come up, anybody who wants to, and we're just going to spend the next 10 minutes or so just praying for Sarah and her children and her ministry because she needs more than probably anybody else in this room the Spirit of God to just give her the strength for every single day. And I just want to tell real quick, I was keeping her kids last year when she went to Boston. And Christina said something to me that really struck me. But I was at the stove and I was cooking, and she's just the most precious thing. And she was like, Miss Tara, she said, we don't have a daddy. She said, but God is our daddy. And it floored me because Sarah shares with me all the time of all the ways God provides for her and her. People ask me all the time, how does she do it? And it's because God is their daddy and God is Sarah's husband. Jesus is. And he has taken care of need after need. She has gotten to place after place of how is this possible? And he'll make a way. And it's just been an amazing thing to see. But if you want to read a book one day that's one of those heroes of the faith, this is it. You get to meet her right here tonight in real life because she's married to Jesus and Jesus is her kid's daddy. And he takes really good care of her. And we can be Jesus' hands and feet. And we can help take care of her in his name. So I just ask y'all to come pray for her tonight. She needs prayer more than she needs anything else. And I thank y'all for coming and hearing Sarah. So.